I never opened someone else's phone, not once in my life. Not my ex's, not my siblings, not even when I had every reason to believe someone was lying to me. I always told myself it was a line I wouldn't cross, that whatever was on the other side wasn't mine to carry. But that was before the cabin, before the lake, before Megan fell asleep next to me with her phone buzzing against my thigh. We were supposed to be taking a break from everything. Megan and I had both burned out hard after a brutal few months at work. She's a copy editor at a marketing firm in Charleston, and I manage logistics for a shipping company out of Savannah. We'd been talking about unplugging for ages, so when I found a week-long rental in the Blue Ridge Mountains, she said yes without even asking for photos. It was a cozy little A-frame near Lake Burton, up in Rabun County, Georgia. No neighbors for a half mile, just trees, water, and sky. The place had patchy cell service, which we both saw as a blessing. The plan was simple. Hike, cook, sleep in, talk about nothing. And that's what we did. For the first few days, it felt like we were reconnecting again, like we were finally breathing. Megan would curl up with a paperback in the hammock while I grilled, and we'd eat on the porch as the sun dropped behind the hills. It was quiet in a way life hadn't been for a long time. Then, on the fifth night, something shifted. We'd had a long hike that afternoon and ended up back at the cabin before dark. Megan took a shower, put on one of my old college hoodies, and curled up next to me on the couch while we watched the fire flicker. At some point, her head tilted onto my shoulder, and within minutes, she was out cold. She looked peaceful, lips slightly parted, hand curled into her chest, phone still in her palm. I didn't mean to look at it. It just buzzed, and I instinctively glanced down. One notification, then another, then a third, all from the same number. The contact name was just T. No emojis, no full name, just T. I stared at it longer than I should have. Then the screen went dark. I felt this weird ripple in my chest. Not jealousy, not yet, just confusion. Megan had never mentioned a T, and we weren't the kind of couple who hid things. At least, I didn't think we were. The phone buzzed again. This time, I read the preview. "You up?" That was it. 2 words, but they hit like a brick. I told myself not to care. She was allowed to have friends. It could be someone from work, a cousin, a running joke. But then another message popped up, and that one changed everything. Wish I was there instead of him. I froze. My heart actually stopped for a second, like my body couldn't quite process the sentence. Instead of him. Instead of me. I looked at Megan, still breathing softly beside me, completely unaware. I told myself to let it go. I told myself to wait until morning and ask her calmly, like an adult. But instead, I picked up her phone. I hesitated just long enough for it to register that this was a boundary I was about to destroy, and then I swiped up and unlocked it. No password. She must have assumed she didn't need one. What I found in those messages, I still don't know how to explain it. Not because it was some dramatic betrayal, not because she was cheating, not exactly, but because what I found was something I never saw coming, and it made me question everything I thought I knew about the person I was lying next to. There were no explicit photos, no confessions of love, no "I miss your body" or "last night was amazing" kind of messages. But somehow, that made it worse. The texts between Megan and T went back months. I scrolled quietly, my thumb moving like it belonged to someone else. She shifted a little in her sleep, and I froze, holding the phone like a live grenade. When she settled again, I kept reading. The first thing I noticed was the tone. It was intimate, but not romantic. Not exactly. They joked about coworkers. They shared links. They talked about music and movies and podcasts Megan had never once brought up to me. T would send a song, and Megan would reply an hour later with a voice memo of her thoughts on the lyrics. Sometimes she laughed in them. That part broke me a little. There were memes, too. Dozens of them. Inside jokes I didn't understand. Callback references to conversations they'd clearly had on the phone. Or worse, in person. It wasn't cheating in the traditional sense, but it was something. And I knew if the roles were reversed, if I had this kind of connection with a woman Megan had never met, she'd be furious. The worst part was, she hadn't told me about him at all. Not once. I knew her friends. I knew her coworkers. Hell, I'd been to her office Christmas party last year and remembered everyone she introduced me to. No T. Not even close. so I did what I said I'd never do. I opened the contact card. Thomas Reynolds, no photo, no notes, just a number. I copied it and pasted it into Google. Nothing. A couple of white pages listings, none of them recent. I tried Facebook next, but there were a dozen Thomas Reynoldses, and I didn't recognize any of the faces. It felt pathetic, sitting there in a rented cabin, my girlfriend asleep beside me, and I'm digging through her digital trail like some suspicious ex-husband in a made-for-TV movie, but I couldn't stop. Finally, I scrolled all the way to the top, to the very first message. "Hey, this is weird, but I think you knew my brother. Sent 9 months ago." Megan replied, "Wow. Yeah, I did. I'm so sorry." That was the beginning. The rest unfolded slowly. Apparently, Megan had gone to college with Thomas's brother, Jeremy. I vaguely remembered the name, someone who had died in a car crash about a year before we started dating. She'd mentioned him once, maybe twice. I hadn't asked for details. The messages that followed were tentative, then emotional. Thomas reaching out, trying to piece together who his brother really was. Megan responding with memories, with warmth. They bonded. Trauma does that. Then things drifted into something else. They weren't mourning anymore. They were sharing, laughing, filling some kind of emotional gap in each other's lives. By the time we hit message Zubbyarter 167, it was obvious. Thomas wasn't just a friend. He was a second version of me. Someone she could talk to, freely and without judgment. Someone she trusted with her thoughts before she even told me. And now he wanted to be here. Wish I was there instead of him. That line wasn't flirty. It wasn't a come on. It was pure longing. And she hadn't responded. Not yet. I put the phone down on the couch cushion and leaned forward, elbows on my knees, heart in my throat. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was something worse. Adrift. Unmoored from the relationship I thought we had. Wondering how long she'd been emotionally somewhere else, even while physically here beside me. Megan stirred, sat up slowly, rubbed her eyes. "Did I fall asleep?" she asked groggily, then smiled. "God, that fire makes me so relaxed." I looked at her and felt like I was seeing someone new, someone I didn't understand. I swallowed the lump in my throat and tried to keep my voice even. "Who's Thomas?" I asked. Her face changed in an instant, eyes wide, smile gone. Not guilty, just caught. And that's when I knew this wasn't just in my head. For a long second, Megan didn't say anything. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed again. She blinked like she was resetting, trying to figure out which version of the truth to start with. "You looked at my phone," she finally asked, voice low and guarded. I didn't flinch. "It lit up while you were asleep. I saw the name, then the message, and, yeah, I opened it." A pause. "Right," she said quietly. She wasn't yelling, wasn't crying, just processing. I could hear the crickets outside, the slow groan of the wooden cabin as it settled into the cold night. The fire had burned low, just coals now. "Who is he?" I asked again. "Really?" Megan sat back, pulling her knees to her chest. She looked small, somehow, like someone who had been stripped of all the armor she usually wore. "Thomas is Jeremy's brother," she said finally. "Jeremy from college. You remember?" "I remember," I said. "You barely talked about him." "I couldn't," she whispered. "I didn't know how." Another silence. She took a shaky breath. "I didn't go to Jeremy's funeral. I found out 2 days after it happened and just froze. We hadn't talked in years, but it hit me harder than I expected. When Thomas reached out months later, I was still carrying all of it. The guilt, the what-ifs. We started talking. At first, it was just about Jeremy, but then she stopped. "Then it became something else," I said. She nodded. I tried to keep my voice steady. "So you've been what? Talking every day?" "Not every day," she said quickly, "but a lot. I didn't mean for it to become a secret. I knew how it would sound, and I didn't want to hurt you." I shook my head. "You didn't want to hurt me, but you still did." She didn't argue. The worst part was, I could see the honesty in her face. She wasn't some master manipulator. She hadn't planned this. It had all just happened, and she'd let it keep happening, thinking that if she never acted on it physically, it didn't count. "Did you ever meet up with him?" I asked. "No." "Did you want to?" A long pause. "I don't know," she said. That answer gutted me more than a yes or no ever could. I stood up and walked toward the sliding door, just needing air. The stars were visible through the trees, crisp and quiet above the dark lake. For a moment, I could almost pretend everything was normal, that we were just another couple up from the city, escaping the noise for a while. But everything had changed. This wasn't about another guy. This was about us. About what had been building, or breaking, for a long time now. She joined me a few minutes later, barefoot, arms wrapped around herself. "I didn't fall in love with him," she said quietly. But I also didn't try hard enough to stop what was happening. I turned to look at her. Why? I think because I didn't know how to tell you I was lonely. That stopped me. Lonely, I repeated. We live together. We eat dinner together. We came out here to get away and be together. I know, she said, and I love you. I do. But something's been missing, and I didn't know how to say it without sounding ungrateful. You've always been steady, solid. You handle things. You don't fall apart. But I think I needed you to fall apart with me, just once, so I knew you were in it. I stared at her, chest tight. I didn't know that, I said. I didn't tell you. We stood there in the quiet, 2 feet apart but 1,000 miles away. No yelling, no ultimatums, just the dull ache of 2 people who'd stopped really seeing each other a while ago and hadn't noticed until now. I think I need some time, I said finally. She nodded. I know. I slept on the couch that night. Neither of us cried. Neither of us said, I'm sorry again. We just went still, like the lake, frozen under the stars. We packed up the cabin in silence the next morning. No big fight, no dramatic goodbye. Just 2 people folding blankets and washing coffee mugs like it was any other Sunday. Megan didn't try to talk to me again, and I didn't ask her to. On the drive back to Charleston, we listened to a podcast neither of us liked. She leaned her head against the window the whole time, eyes half closed, while I gripped the steering wheel like it was the only thing holding me together. We got home around 6 p.m. She went straight to the bedroom. I sat on the edge of the couch for a while, staring at the spot where I'd found the messages just 2 nights earlier. It felt like it had been months ago. A different lifetime. Eventually, she came out with a duffel bag and her keys. I'm going to stay at Amber's for a bit, she said softly. I nodded. Neither of us said, I love you. Neither of us said, don't go. I watched her pull out of the driveway, then sat alone in the quiet apartment for hours. Didn't turn on the lights. Didn't touch my phone, just sat there, trying to feel anything besides hollow. Over the next few days, we texted once or twice, mostly logistics, rent, mail, whether she'd picked up the charger she left behind. I didn't ask about Thomas. She didn't bring him up. Then, a week later, she asked if we could meet. We sat on a bench downtown near the water, close to the market where we'd bought candles and jam like a couple of tourists our first year together. She looked tired. I probably did too. I ended it, she said without preamble. With him, I asked. She nodded. There wasn't anything to end, technically, but I told him I can't talk to him anymore, that it crossed a line, that I let it cross a line. I believed her, but it didn't bring me peace. I keep going back to what you said, I told her, about being lonely. She looked down at her hands. Yeah. I didn't know you felt that way, I said. I thought we were good, maybe not perfect, but safe. I thought safe was enough. I think that's what I told myself too, she said, but I was starting to disappear inside it. That line stuck with me. Disappear inside it. Sometimes love feels like a home, and sometimes it feels like a room with no doors. We talked for over an hour, not about fixing anything, just about how it all got here, the routines we stopped questioning, the check-ins we stopped having, the quiet ways we drifted, like erosion on a cliff you don't notice until the whole thing caves in. When she stood to leave, she turned to me and said, Whatever happens, I really did love you. I nodded. I know. She walked away, and I didn't stop her. It's been 5 months now. We've spoken a few times since then. Civil, careful. She moved in with a friend across town. I stayed in the apartment until the lease was up, then took a place closer to work. I still think about her when I pass the old coffee shop we used to visit on Sundays. Still wonder if she ever reopened that playlist Thomas sent her. Still wonder if she ever listens to it alone. We weren't toxic. We weren't explosive. We were just unfinished. Sometimes I think the most painful kind of heartbreak is the one with no villain. Just 2 people who couldn't quite reach each other in the end. And, yeah, I broke a rule. I opened a phone that didn't belong to me. But if I hadn't, we might still be smiling across a dinner table, both pretending nothing was broken, both feeling alone and not saying it. Sometimes the truth isn't something you find, it's something that buzzes in your lap while the person you love is asleep beside you.